Alright guys, we're going to do a reloading video today on the 6.5 Creedmoor. We're just going to be making some basic cider rounds, nothing too wild. Something to get the scope zeroed so I can start with this load development. I've already loaded up the low development rounds, so these are going to be the blasting rounds, cider rounds, but we're still going to do as much precision as we can. As you can see here, I've got all the dies torn apart. What I did is I took them out into the garage and I blasted them all clean with brake clean. I put them in a glass measuring cup that the wife said that I could keep. So cleaned all that stuff off. It's nice and shiny now. I made sure to get into all the threads, get all the basically the grease that the manufacturer puts on there so that they don't rust in the box. So now they're good to go. Before we use any of the sizing dies, we're going to blast them with a little bit of lube, make sure they're good to go. So let's get these all put together, and then we'll do a little bit of brass prep. We'll throw some powder charges, prime the brass, and complete the rounds. Then they'll be ready for shooting. Alright, so this is what we're dealing with here. We've got Hornady brass. This stuff's been once fired. I used this in my first Uintah Precision videos, and I had about 18 pieces hanging around in one of the boxes. Just in case something like this happened, if I ever needed some 6.5 Creedmoor brass. So, what we're going to do, we're going to clean out the primer pockets, and then we're going to brush out the case necks, chamfer and deburr the neck. We're going to full length size them, so we're going to have to lube them all up. Full length size them, then we're going to get all that off in a quick tumble in my tumbler. Then go ahead and throw them in the press, put a primer in, give it a powder charge, seat some 140 grain Hornady ELD-Match Bullets, and then they should be ready for sighting in and just blasting away and getting the barrel a little bit fouled up. That's the whole idea behind these, is to get the barrel fouled up enough and broken in a little bit, just so that the different sizes and groups I can actually trust, not just think, was that really a worse charge, or was that just the barrel changing and getting fouled up because it's a brand new gun. So we're going to use these as foulers and blasting rounds. Alright, first step, let's clean out these primer pockets. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's down inside the primer pocket. See all that black junk, how there's a little bit of shiny in there? We definitely want these to be more shiny. So this is my primer pocket cleaning tool. It's got a small and a large, so it's real simple. You just scrape it around, go back and forth, and then I usually tap it on the countertop. Ooh, look at that. Yeah, much more shiny. Now that's ready to be reloaded. Because I'm not super worried about the precision of these, so something to keep in mind. As you do any process on brass, I'll either put them case neck up or case head up. That way I can tell which ones I have done the process on and which ones I haven't done the process on. You could also get two trays. That's a simple way to do it as well. So again, couple twists. Now if you're doing like real match stuff, then you want to like be as consistent as possible, but I'm not super worried right now. That one's good and clean. Flip it over. You can start going pretty quick when you do this. It doesn't take long at all. Now because this is once fired bolt action rifle brass, it's really not that dirty. Up around the case necks, it's a little bit sooty up there, not a big deal. So I'm not going to clean these. I'm just going to lube them up, and then when I tumble them to get the lube off, that will clean them just a little bit up around the neck. So I'm not going to worry about cleaning these in a super crazy process right now. Once fired bolt action rifle brass usually doesn't get that dirty. And the way I shot it anyway, I was shooting it, taking it out, and putting it back in the ammo box anyway, so it stayed relatively clean. So I've got this universal loading tray. When I put them down in there, that's not quite enough of the case sticking out. I want to really get a lot of lube on these, so luckily on the back side there are these cups right there. That's a perfect amount of case standing out. So let's load these back into the tray, and then we'll blast them with some Hornady one-shot case lube. I really like that stuff. It works well for my purposes. I have never had a stuck case yet. I usually go down, I usually try and get a spray for each row, left to right, and then I will flip the tray 180 degrees, so I'm spraying the back sides of them, and then I go one spray for each row. I normally spray these in my garage, but it's 10 degrees outside, so. Notice I keep it on a fairly high angle. That's to try and get just a little bit of case lube down into the necks. So we'll spin these around. You gotta shake this stuff up, so. There we go. Let that sit for 1 minute and it's ready to go. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we're going to spray just a little bit of lube up into the full length sizing die in an effort to not get a stuck case. But we're not gonna like fill this thing up by any means. I mean, we're just gonna kind of spritz it. We're just gonna, there we go. Now I'm going to be going with what Lee suggests for setting up their full length die, because I don't have a piece of fired brass to figure out what the headspace is on this rifle. So we're just gonna load it to factory spec and it should work just fine. So you lift up the ram, you screw the die in till it makes contact with your shell holder, right there. Then Lee says you lift the ram and you go 1/4 to 1/3 turn more, and then you finger tighten the lock ring. So right here, I'm only twisting this little lock ring. It's got a rubber O-ring on there, and that holds it in place. So now when I push the ram up, this shell holder makes full contact with the die, and it's going to give this piece of brass a full length resize. So now that our cases are lubed, go ahead and throw that in there. And then you're going to feel maybe a little bit of rubbing about right there. This process got a little bit mixed up as far as my process goes. Normally this pops out your primer, but I used a universal decapping die. This is what that is, that's a decapper. So the primers were already out of this. Normally as I push them up in there, the primers are popping out, and that's most likely how yours will be. So let's throw another one in. As you go up, good firm press. Pull it out nice and slow. Here we go. Try not to run this up through too many times. Every time it's going up in there, it's squeezing the neck closed and opening it back up to a uniform consistency. Try not to do that too much because it actually work hardens your brass, and your case mounts will split faster when you do that. So when you shoot it, there's more of a possibility of your case cracking, and then you can't use it anymore at that point. One of the functions that this full-length sizing die performs is it takes a case neck that's been blown out, that you've shot a bullet out of. See how the bullet does not fit? It just loosely slides in and out, no problem. This is a piece of brass that we've resized, and now that piece of brass has a firm fit. It's going to hang on to this bullet. So this is ready to be loaded. This one isn't going to do us any good. Another thing you can do to check case mouth, let's see if the case mouth is open or closed. Right here we got a measurement of 292 or so, 291.5. So let's throw this through the resizer. And then take another measurement. So right in the same spot. Now we're down to 283. 282.5, 283-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. Now at this point, if you've shot them multiple times, it's a good idea to check your overall length. So because I've actually never measured these because they were factory ammunition, let's check the overall length. 1.920. So that's the max case length. Normally you'd trim this down 10 thousandths, but I haven't got my trimmer just yet. So in bad practice, we're gonna run it at the max case length. That's not really going to be a problem. If it's like 1925 or 1930, that would be a problem. See, 1918. So we're going to run these as they are. We will trim them next time. If yours are right up there, basically if they're above the 5 thousandths of room, I usually trim them. Or I trim them all to make them the same length. But I am going to put a nice clean chamfer and deburr on there. Usually if I trim them, it creates a flat jagged edge around the mouth, and then I just take my chamfer deburr tool, and because These don't have a big nasty edge to them. Just nice and gentle, and then rotate it, and it doesn't take much. And now it's got a nice clean mouth of the case on there. But you see how there's little shavings of brass hanging around right there? That's because of the lube, it kind of stuck there. So I do this before I tumble. That way it tumbles all the little brass pieces out and cleans up the brass a little bit better. Because I don't want to be seating a bullet with like brass shavings next to the bullet as it gets smashed down through there. It will cause inconsistencies and possible problems later on. So let's flip the cases over after I do each one. Then they're ready for the dry media tumbler. This is a dry media tumbler, and the dry media that I use is crushed walnuts, and it's got a little bit of treatment in there as well. It's kind of dyed red. This is a lemon red walnut material. They also offer corn cob. The walnut's supposed to be a little more aggressive of a cleaner, a little more like jagged edge, a little bit bigger pieces. So let's go ahead, dump in our 6.5 Creedmoor. Let's drop the top on this thing and fire it up. And these things are good and annoying. So I keep mine in an opposite room, and we'll get these out in about 20 or 30 minutes. There are tools to help separate the tumbling media from your brass, but if you just tap it on the side and shake it out, it'll get all the tumbling media out. You also want to make sure that the flash hole is clear of any debris as well. Right there we can see that it goes all the way through. So keep those two things in mind. Clean it all the way out, and just make sure you get all your media out of it. Now I made a few careful considerations when choosing the powder and primer choice. What I'm doing here is I'm going to load them with Hybrid 100V. The reason I'm using this powder is because where I'm at this time frame, this stuff's easy to find. H4350 is still very hard to find in my area, so I'm going with Hybrid for the blasting rounds. The primers I'm using are the large rifle Magnum primers. These are CCI number 250. 6.5 Creedmoor does not need Magnum primers under every load. However, with this powder, I've found better performance with Magnum primers. So that's what we're going to use. That's what we're going to prime these cases with. Also with 6.5 Creedmoor, you need to know if you have a large or a small primer. That's a key factor in the performance that you will get. So before you start reloading your 6.5 Creedmoor, you need to know which brass you have and if it has small or large rifle primers. This is one of the few cases that has both, depending on the brand, and even some of the same brands have small and large. So these are large Hornady rifle primers. As far as setting up the seating die, it's pretty simple as well. Lift the ram. This is what Lee recommends. Lowering the die down. I'm actually going to have to adjust the lock ring on this. Lowering the die until it touches the shell holder. There we go, good contact. Now lift the shell holder and go in a 1/2 to 1/4 turn, and then tighten up your lock ring. So now when you push the press up, good solid contact with your shell holder. There are multiple tools for priming brass. The method that I choose to use is I just put my primers in the priming arm on the press. So I pick them up, drop them in the large rifle cup that I've put in there, and then as you squeeze down, this arm comes up through your shell holder. So your brass will be pulled down over that primer. That's how that works. So we'll slide a piece in, and then just with a hand tight, give it a good snug push, and there we go. Our primers are seated. A few considerations when using and dealing with primers is they're very sensitive to water, so you don't want to get any amount of moisture around them, even if it's like a very humid environment that you're storing them in. That may start causing some issues for you as well, so you got to be aware of that. Also, the oils in your hands could possibly ruin your primer, so when I grab them, I try not to grab them on the flat sides, like where my finger would be going down into the primer, where the colored area is, where the anvil is, and where the actual priming agent is. So I try to grab them by the sides and then press them into the brass. Every time I pull out a piece of brass, I always flip it and run my finger over it to make sure that it sits flush or down below the head of the case. If any of them stick out, that's going to be a real problem, and that thing could go bang when I don't want it to. I always check my cases for media in the primer pocket, and a good way to get rid of it in there is just use decapping pins, because that's exactly what they're designed to do anyway, is to knock things out of primer pockets. This one's strangely dirty, so I'm going to set this aside and I'll deal with that in a minute. This one's clean, so let's keep on priming. And those are the few considerations to think about when using primers. Just be careful with them. Obviously this is what goes bang and sets everything off, so as you're priming, try and be gentle. Just kind of use some common sense basically. If you get one stuck in sideways, you can use your decapping pin and very carefully push it out. Basically, if you're worried about it going off, like if you've accidentally seated one backwards, you can add water to the primer and that should kill it. It won't work at that point. So put some water on it and it's done. So at that point, you could safely push it out with a decapping pin. Let me double check that primer pocket. That one's good to go. And again, just nice, snug fit. If the primers slide in really easy, that means that the brass has been fired a few too many times and the primer pocket is basically, there's been too much pressure on it and it's slowly blown out a bit, and it's not going to securely hold your primer anymore, which will cause issues. So once your primer pockets aren't very snug, you've got problems. But you have to physically do this firsthand to start to understand what a tight primer pocket feels like and what a loose primer pocket feels like. With 6.5 Creedmoor, it's a decent amount of pressure. It's nothing wild. I mean, I'm just doing it with my hand, and I give it a good firm press at the end just to basically push that primer down in there, and it's good to go. You don't need to crush it. You don't need to go wild with the pressure. You don't need to like hammer on the end of the lever, nothing like that. So that's priming. Next step is powder charge. Something I've found very interesting with all the 6.5 Creedmoor reloading data for Hybrid 100V. I have a little bit older reloading data for it. I have the Hornady 9th edition reloading manual, and in the 10th edition reloading manual, the powder charges for Hybrid 100V change significantly. Also, if you get on Hodgdon Reloading Data Center online, Berger's data is different as well for the 140s. So in the older data, they run this stuff really hot and they show these crazy high velocities with it, but no one else suggests velocities, no one else suggests powder charges that hot with Hybrid 100V, so be careful with that. Definitely check multiple sources of data with the Hybrid 100V as far as what should be safe. So from my understanding right now, 38 grains should be a medium charge. It should be well within the limits of the operating pressures, should give me decent velocity. I'm not trying to go with anything crazy. In fact, crazy velocities are actually bad for breaking in a barrel because it increases copper fouling sooner. So we're just going to start off with some semi-mellow medium charges, and these should just be fun shooting rounds. So that's what we're going for here. Nothing crazy. So let's try it out. Let's see what this thing's throwing right now. I always tap it twice up, and then I tap it twice down to make sure the powder got out of there. Well, didn't zero out my pan, so let's try this again. Zero it. Zero it. I know what my pan weighs. That's 41 grains. I do not want 41 grains. I want 38. So let's do about 3 rotations of that. This is how I set my powder charges. I get them close with this, and then I trickle them up with my powder trickler on a cheap digital scale. And I actually need to upgrade my digital scale. Mine's kind of flaking in and out every now and then. So I'm actually going to go up a half rotation more on the powder volume there. So let's throw one more and see where that puts us. I usually like to throw about 3/10 low, maybe a half grain low. That way I'm not trickling forever. So that's 37.8, perfect. I want 38 grains. And this Hybrid 100V is fairly dense, so it doesn't take a whole lot of trickling to increase the weight there. So that's 38. I need my funnel. I just use a plain Jane plastic funnel. This came with my Lee kit, so it's actually pretty good at not building up static. I just pour it slowly and let it all flow down in there, and then as it gets there, give it a couple taps, helps it settle down in there. And then I move my funnel to the next case in line. So dump your powder, tap it in there to settle it, and immediately move the funnel. That way you don't double charge. I can't double charge this and put a bullet in there. It would just start overflowing, but if I double charge it, it becomes a mess and it's a pain in my butt. So okay, let's see where this throws it. 38 right on the nose. And because I don't really care, we're just gonna throw them. I'm gonna verify each one's charge weight. I kind of settle the powder in the pan a little bit, make it more even. 37.8, that's close enough. These are just Fowlers, nothing too wild here. Move along quickly. 37.7, we'll bump that up a few grains. 37.9, there we go. Not to be confused with being in a rush, but I just don't really care to weigh them out to the perfect, to the grain exact reading at this time. So 38. I'm still keeping them within like 2/10 of the charge I want. And how I have this set up to throw is light, so if I don't measure one of them, it's going to be a lighter charge. 38 right on the nose. Well, that's how I charge my cases, so I'm going to go through the rest of these, and we'll talk to you guys in a second about bullet seating. Here's a reloading tip for you. Check your cases, make sure they have powder in them. It will save you a major headache. Looks like we're good here. So let's move on to seating some bullets. Okay, before I ever seat a bullet, I always look down in the case, make sure there's powder in there, and place it in the shell holder. We can actually remove the priming arm right here. It gets it out of the way, and then you don't got to worry about it. Take a bullet, make sure it's the correct bullet. 6.5 140 ELD. I don't have anything else that's even similar to these, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop it in there. The boat tails make it easy to get your bullet in the ballpark, and there's multiple ways to do this. We're going to back our seating die way out here to where it's almost coming out, and then we're just going to slowly push it up in there. Oh, it just started pushing it in. Actually, it hasn't. It did not make any contact. So there, it's just making contact with the bullet. So it hasn't been pushed in any. At this point, we can bring it in basically 3 full rotations. And that will push down on the bullet a little bit. Let's grab our calipers. Yep, they're zeroed. Now let's check the overall length. The overall length I'm going for is 2.8, just to keep it simple. That's 3.030. So we got a ways to go. We can do basically 2 full rotations here, and that'll put us down closer to what we're looking for. All right, so let's go in another half. Run it up in here, nice. And anytime you run it back up in, don't slam it into the die. Let it gently come to where you feel it come in contact, and then slowly apply pressure, and then give it a firm press once it's come to a stop. Otherwise, your seating die can create a little ring around the bullet. So we're at 2.888. So we need to take out 88 thousandths. You definitely don't want to push it in too far. That creates a real problem. Then you have to pull your bullets. So we're going under a quarter turn here. We're 2.810. A little bump. 2.801. So we're going to call that good. We will try out the next bullet. So let's grab the next brass. Make sure there's powder in there. Grab the next bullet. And seat the bullet. Nice and easy. You can stop halfway through the seating process and rotate it a quarter turn and then finish seating the bullet. And the idea behind this is that if your seating die doesn't seat it perfectly centered, as you rotate it, it'll help kind of even it out on its way down. So let's take this, measure it, make sure that our seating die is consistently measuring these out. So that's 2.801 and a half, exactly the same. Now you may see 3 to 5 thousandths variation from bullet to bullet, and it depends if your bullet has a ballistic tip. This one does, the little plastic tip. So these are supposed to be more consistent than a traditional exposed lead tip, like a Sierra Game King. It doesn't make that big of a difference, like 3 or 5 thousandths, if you're measuring exactly from the tip. If you're using a bullet comparator, which measures down here on the shoulder of the bullet, that's where you want like exact same measurements. So 2.803. See, this is 2 thousandths long, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's most likely going to be really similar to the other ones. So, and also with this being a blasting round, I know I beat that horse to death, but I don't really care in this instance. I want to make good ammo, but I don't need to, I'm not going for bench rest, same whole group stuff, you know. I'm kind of cleaning up the neck here. There's a little bit of grunge on it. So that's my bullet seating process. Another way you can set up your seating die. So let's back this out. Oh no, I just ruined all my seating steps. So if we back this way out to where you can see the threads up top, you can take a completed round. If you have a factory round or a completed round of the length that you're looking for, take that and put it in here. Slowly lift your ram up to where, and try to make sure when it stops that it's the press arm coming to the top and it's not coming in contact with the die. So push it all the way down, there we go. And then you can twist in your seating stem and wait till you feel it come in contact with the bullet. So right there, I feel it come in contact. So usually what I do is I will back it out and just go a little bit more. Usually it's about 2 thousandths long when I set it this way. So this one's got powder. Let's grab a new bullet. And so let's seat this one now that we just reset it using a pre-made bullet. All the way to the bottom, give it a bump. Let's grab our calipers. 2.803. So that's so close. I mean, I'm just going to run it in just a touch. The last bullet we made was 2.803, so I'm not sure if it's coming down to the tip of the bullet, but it's so close. I mean, that's a great way to set up your seating die if you happen to still have a bullet from the last time you loaded. Usually I shoot all my bullets, so I have to set it up manually every time, which can be a little bit annoying. So this is my seating process. Let's skip ahead to the final step of reloading the 6.5 Creedmoor. Our final step in reloading 6.5 Creedmoor for me is going to be labeling my components. I just take a Sharpie and write directly on the case. So what I'm going to write here is 38 100V. Or you could write 38V. I mean, whatever you want to do. So I know that these are all going to be 38 grains of 100V because these are Hornady head stamps. All my other brass that I am loading up for my load development that I'm doing for real precision work is going to be in my Atlas Development Group brass. So if you're looking for a new source of 6.5 Creedmoor brass, take a look at Atlas Development. They're making some good stuff. I compared it to the Hornady brass here, and it's a bit more consistent in weight, which tells me that the wall thickness is probably a bit better, just a little bit higher quality there. Also, they use a double striking. Also, they double strike the heads of the case, swaging out the primer pockets, so it actually work hardens the brass where you want it to be work hardened, is down by the primer pocket. And they were saying that they've tested those up to beyond 10 firings and that they still met the specs that they needed to. So really impressive stuff. I can't wait to load up a bunch of that and continue to abuse it and see how it takes it. And of course, what we're actually going to be shooting the 6.5 Creedmoor out of is my Uintah Precision UPR10 upper. This is a really cool design. It's a bolt action AR-10 upper. So you take your .308 battle rifle, pop out 2 pins, put in 2 pins, and you've turned it into a 26-inch barreled bolt action precision rifle. Let's take a quick look at that. Yeah, that shilling barrel hanging out over there. And there's my Vortex Viper that's ready to go on top. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was helpful. This is basically what you can expect when reloading 6.5 Creedmoor. That was basically the absolute basics of how you want to do it. So if you're just looking for blasting rounds, maybe you're just looking for reloading in one night 100 rounds for a PRS competition, that's one way to do it. I mean, this cartridge is inherently accurate, and it's a very well-rounded cartridge. I'm actually going to do a video on that, basically discussing why 6.5 Creedmoor has reached the popularity that it has, on my view. If you own a 6.5 Creedmoor, you're already on board with it. You know what I'm talking about. So that's basically going to be it. I would appreciate it if you guys subscribed. I would appreciate it even more if you drop a comment. I enjoy talking with everybody on here. So I appreciate it. Thanks everybody involved. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for your time, and we will talk to you later.